The voice inside your head that shames you, tells you you're not worthy, tells you you're not good enough, is something that you've been conditioned with at an early age. It's something that you can let go of. You don't actually have to experience it. The voice inside your head, your inner critic, that shames you and attacks you, is something that you can heal. This is the byproduct of conditioning from an early age. I'm going to be explaining to you where it came from really shortly, but I want to let you know that you can have high standards while letting go of that very critical, perfectionistic, and uncomfortable attitude. You can have high goals that you want to reach without shaming yourself when you inevitably fail at something in life. Because failure is just a part of life. It's inevitable. So your inner critic came through external feedback from caregivers, teachers, society, etc. Essentially, your approval was very conditional. There was a conditional, basically, if you don't act in this kind of way, we're not going to approve of you. And when you don't act in that particular set of standards, right, there was a standard you had to meet, you were rejected, or you were rejected. I'll just leave it at that. And you started to internalize this over time, that when I am not this good, when I'm not this worthy enough, right, then I'm bad. Right? Bad in this context just meaning not worthy of approval. You're doing something that doesn't lead to approval, something we don't approve of, and we're not going to give you love. So messages of inadequacy get internalized over time. And not just direct messages, but subtle things, the emotional tone, the mood, the body language. Things like this, you pick up on, especially when you're really young. You can feel it very deeply. You have a very sensitive nervous system. And you just sense it. That, oh, I have to be doing this to get approval. It's not conscious, it's just something that you're automatically doing as a kid. So I want to talk a little bit about how to actually heal this. How do you heal this part of you that's creating unnecessary suffering? Because like I said, you don't have to actually spend the rest of your life shaming yourself, criticizing yourself, being super perfectionistic, hating yourself when you inevitably fail. All these things, they're unnecessary. And they're the byproduct of a lot of psychological and emotional constructs. Things like my worth, whether I'm good enough. These are all mental constructs. These are things that we've just been conditioned with that form our sense of ego. Our ego, our actual sense of self, is something that forms in response to the reflections of our environment, like parents, caregivers, teachers, etc. Their reflections of us become our reflection of ourself. So as you're able to essentially look into these parts of your mind, and as you're able to go deeper with your awareness of them, you'll recognize how unnecessary they actually are, and they will be something that you can actually stop doing. So let's talk about how to actually get to that point. The first is shifting from criticism to curiosity. Get curious about what this is. Get curious about this part of you and what it's doing. Essentially, this part of you is just trying to keep you alive. It's trying to protect you because you needed approval in order to survive as a kid. It's a need. You need some kind of external validation. And this part of you, this part of your mind, it's not trying to harm you or attack you or leave you stuck in suffering forever. It's trying to kind of keep you in line so that you're able to get the approval that you need in order to survive. The problem is, though, is that you're an adult now. You don't need that much approval from everyone and all the time, and that it's actually just causing you suffering now. So recognize that part of your mind, right, it was developed at a very young age. So you're not dealing with an adult, you're dealing with a part of you that's stuck in that time period of your life from ages like 3 to 6. right? So you got to shift from inner criticism to curiosity, right? Instead of battling self-judgment, observe it with curiosity. Where did this voice come from? What is it trying to protect me from? Right? When you engage with it with a sort of compassionate curiosity, how does the relationship begin to change? How does its power weaken? Next is just practicing pure awareness, which I talk about a lot in my videos. Essentially, you don't fight or try and suppress the critic. You watch it without reacting. Pure awareness, which is different from thought. Thought is not awareness. Pure awareness, without judgment, without thought, without interpretation, just pure attention shining on it, dissolves conditioning. Instead of analyzing it or trying to figure it out or arguing with it, you just simply notice it. Right? It arises. There it is again. Right? You just watch it. I have a previous video on this. I'd recommend checking it out. Maybe it's 2 or 3 videos ago. I don't remember. But essentially, pure awareness is something that you learn to do in meditation, which I'd recommend actually practicing. You need some kind of way to snap out of these patterns, some way to just practice being conscious and present in the moment, so that you're not stuck in the old patterns all the time. You need some kind of way to just attune to what's happening now without judgment, without interpretation, without thought always filtering your experience of it. There's a difference between saying, hey, I'm aware of my hand, versus an actual direct observation of the hand without tuning into the mental noise of the mind. Just watching, just observing, just shining attention on it. Same thing with the inner world. There's a difference between saying, I'm aware of this thought, versus actually just shining it with pure attention. You have to shine it with pure attention, and over time this begins to dismantle the conditioning. This weakens its power. So the more you observe it neutrally, the less grip it actually has on you. The more you observe it neutrally, the more you realize it's not who you are. This isn't your identity. The more it begins to dismantle, the more you begin to realize that this part of your ego is just trying to protect you. And you don't have to be identified with it. And as you shatter that sense of identity with it, it begins to just break down. Next is rewiring it with self-compassion. Right? So self-compassion is about reprogramming your mind in a new way of being, rather than in a way that is geared towards self-shame and self-hatred. You're wiring it more towards things like self-appreciation. Right? Having that sense of open heart towards yourself. So that when you fail, for example, you can look at the reasons why you failed with compassion. When you have a goal, right, you can have those high standards, but it's not held rigidly and with force. It's held with love. It's a very different approach. Right? So you can have that goal that you're working towards, right? When you inevitably fail, you say, hey, why did I fail? Just in a very curious way. Yeah, what are the reasons for why I failed? And then you're able to just, instead of shaming yourself, hold yourself with compassion, recognizing this as just a part of the process, recognizing this as just a natural part of life, rather than something that's fundamentally wrong with you. And just from that place, your ability to actually grow and achieve your goals is actually far better. The energy is more fluid, it's more light. The energy is pleasurable, it feels significantly better. The energy of just criticizing yourself is very tense, it's very constricted. And I also encourage you to really fully feel the pain of shaming yourself and holding on to all these narratives. Fully direct your attention. Give pure awareness to the pain that it generates. Process that pain. And as you're able to recognize that, yeah, this is generating a lot of pain, and as you raise your consciousness of this, as you raise your awareness of this, you're going to recognize, holy shit, I'm doing this. These are all things I'm proactively doing, but they're just so subconscious that I don't even know how to stop. But as you raise your awareness of it, they become less subconscious, they become less automatic, right? They control you less, and you can just start to let it go. Another core thing is that you can just question the authority of the critic. Again, most of these are just things that you have inherited, things you've been conditioned with. This stuff is always mental constructs. Worth is a mental construct. Your value is a mental construct. These aren't facts about who you are. These are things you've just been conditioned with. Is it really true that you're just an unworthy loser who's very stupid? Like, this is just who you are? Of course it's not. Of course it's just ridiculous. This is all constructs you have about yourself. Self-images. Representations that you have of yourself. These are background stories that you have to shine the light of awareness on, like I said. And as you do that, they weaken their grip on you begins to weaken. Their power over you begins to weaken. And then you feel free. You free up all the energy that goes to maintaining all that conditioning. You free up the energy that you were wasting holding on to all that shit. So you can actually give your critic a new job as well. Because there's healthy criticism and then there's unhealthy criticism. So your inner critic is designed for self-preservation. It's trying to help you to survive. Instead of fighting, you can actually redirect it. Right? You can actually have the intention to help it, to allow these critical parts of your mind to help you improve with love, with flow, with ease, rather than with shame, force. Right? There's that healthy criticism where, again, if you fail, you can see why something failed, or you can see how you can do better at something. But then there's just downright self-attacking. And the self-attacking is unnecessary. You're putting energy into it, right? It's exhausting. It's unconscious. It's got a lot of power over you because you're not very aware of it. The less conscious of it you are, the more it's going to control you. You don't shine pure attention on it, pure awareness. And the more you just shine pure awareness on it, its power begins to loosen. It becomes less subconscious and more conscious. You see how you're doing it, how you're actually controlling it, and then you can just stop. You recognize, this is so painful. Why would I keep doing this to myself? It's like I'm just abusing myself over and over and over again. I'm just attacking myself over and over and over again. Why am I doing this? This is unnecessary. I just straight up do not have to do this. But you get to that realization by applying deep attention to it repeatedly and learning to actually challenge these narratives as well. So your true self isn't the voice of the critic. You need to actually drop beneath the mental noise and just embody more presence and connect to that wounded part of you that just wants acceptance. Right? You can have that very feminine style, heart-centered compassion towards it. Right? You need to integrate that, but you also need to integrate a very sort of masculine approach, which is all about structure, right? And like setting standards and logic and having like a sharp intellect. Right? You need to get the best of both: the nurture, the compassion, the care, the attunement, the empathy, the ability to just be with something, to surrender and just be with the thing. And then the capacity to actually have high standards still. The capacity to have discernment, to discern between one thing and another thing. Right? Getting the best of both worlds when it comes to the masculine and the feminine. So the more you embody presence, the more the inner critic simply fades into irrelevance. You naturally start to see any kind of shame-based narrative as just like not needed, not relevant, until the point where it just starts to really fade away. To the point where you have a very weak inner critic. So the last point here that I've mentioned a bit is holding high standards with gentle hands. Right? Kind of just the masculine and the feminine, right? Kind of like the yin-yang. Those two opposing forces integrated into one whole. Right? So instead of something like I failed, I'm not good enough, right? It can be more oriented towards something like I didn't meet my standards, but I'm learning. right? And you can't just like replace the thoughts. I'm not telling you here to just replace the thoughts, but it's like you're shifting towards that way of speaking to yourself through presence, through awareness, through connecting to that part of you. So you can strive for excellence, you can have high standards, but you can do that without beating yourself up. Again, keep in mind that that pattern is very ingrained in you and it's very subconscious. So how do we remove this? Shining the light of pure awareness onto it so that we don't have to run into the same problem over and over again. When something subconscious is controlling you, you need to make the unconscious conscious so that you can let it go. So that simply by shining the light of awareness on it, it begins to dismantle. You feel the pain generated by it, and just that pain alone is motivating enough for you to just not do it anymore. Just like how you don't put your hand on a hot stove because, well, that sucks. You don't have to shame yourself. And it becomes easy to not do that once you really deeply see the pain that it generates. That pain alone will let you know to avoid it. That pain is there for a good reason. It's telling you not to do this. So that's it for this video. If you're interested in going deeper, I have a free book list. Check out the therapy and healing section, full of great resources. I also offer one-to-one coaching. You can check that out. Link is in the pinned comment. See you later.